everybody, and welcome back to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm ready to talk some fantasy. With me today, I'm all over. I fumbled the intro for the first time in like 200 and something episodes. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
You took my line, sort of, because I'm supposed to say...
Well, you just pretend like it never happened. Charles. I got back, I reset. Now my friend Dylan.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend Charles.
Yes, and I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan. But not just any fantasy today.
Oh.
Because now we are released into the episode, and I don't have to remember any more lines, because this is the continuation of yet another one of our very famous Friends Pitching Fantasy series. Woo! You know, as I said in the first episode, we like to read a lot of books here on the Friends Pitching Fantasy podcast, and
Friends Talking Fantasy.
What did I say?
You said last time too. You said the Friends Pitching Fantasy podcast.
Well, on the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast, but we also love to choose what to read next. That's a very serious decision. That's a big commitment. And so we've decided to bring that into the show as one of the things that we've continued to do since the beginning of Friends Talking Fantasy 4 years ago. And it is always an exciting time. Just a few days ago at the time of this release, Dylan had pitched 3 books to me, and I will ultimately have to pick one next week. But today is all about my 3 pitches to Dylan, and he will have to choose one next week as well. So we will end up with 2 books to read on the show, which is very exciting. But that's not all, guys, because you can also help us out by casting your votes over on social media. The poll's probably open or closing soon on Dylan's 3 pitches. So you definitely want to go and check those out. Dylan, do you want to just do a quick recap of the 3 books that you pitched the other day?
Yes. I pitched The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, The Magicians by Lev Grossman, and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, a Cosmere novel by Brandon Sanderson.
3 fantastic pitches out there. So, I'm going to have a hard time picking one of those, but I'm waiting to see what the social media poll says. That will help, so make sure you go over there. Now, Dylan, I have 3 pretty heavy hitters for you today. I'm curious to see which way you're going to go with these. You already know what they are. We've talked about them before. Anyone watching can kind of get a glimpse of the episode preview. So I'm just going to go ahead and read them super quick. We have the first one is going to be The 3-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. I don't know. I hope I'm going to butcher that completely.
You should have a little more preparing there, Charles.
Cixin. Cixin Liu. So obviously,
we'll get that worked out, Lloyd.
We'll get that worked out. But it's super popular science fiction novel, right? It's super trendy right now because of the Netflix show. And we're going to get into that in the pitch. We also have Fairy Tale, which is by Stephen King. Maybe you've heard of him.
Never.
So his latest fantasy
People aren't going to know you're joking with that pronunciation after after some of your earlier flubs. I don't think
is this man mentally ill? Is he having an episode? It's certainly possible. Look, this is not the same show it was 4 years ago. We were younger men back then, okay? We it's not quite the same. Minds start to go. But anyway, Stephen King's latest fantasy novel back from 2022, Fairy Tale, is the next one that I've pitched. And then last but most certainly not least is the continuation of our reading of Robin Hobb. And it's part of the realm of the Elderlings. Of course, the next trilogy is the Liveship Traders, and that is starting with Ship of Magic. So 3 heavy hitters. Dylan, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really torn already, Charles, and I haven't even heard the pitches. So
I know.
it's it's going to be a tough one. I'm also trying to figure out how to pronounce, not Stephen King, but
Robin Hobb.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to pronounce Robin Hobb. No, it's tough. It doesn't.
Yeah, and I see it written both ways. Like I see Liu comes first, and then I'll just call him Liu for now. Liu for now, and we are going to work on that pronunciation. So, of course, this is the first book. I'm just going to jump right into the pitch. It is a huge science fiction novel. Let me go ahead and read the back of the book blurb. Set against the backdrop of China's Cultural Revolution, a secret military project sends signals into space to establish contact with aliens. An alien civilization on the brink of destruction captures the signal and plans to invade Earth. Meanwhile, on Earth, different camps start forming, planning to either welcome the superior beings and help them take over the world seen as corrupt, or to fight against the invasion. So that is the 3-body problem. I mean, what is there to say? This is a huge release for sci-fi. I remember when it came out back in the day, I had, a few years after this came out, I had a roommate in college who was absolutely obsessed with this book. And he kept begging me to read it, and I always wanted to, but
I wonder what that's like.
For whatever reason, I just
Charles to read one of your favorite books and have him just deny you over and over again.
I've always wanted to read it, but I never did. And now, what a great opportunity to give it a chance. And, we always had similar interests. So the fact that he was super into this book was definitely a selling point for me. Dylan, you may be interested to know, and I'm not sure if you knew this, that, of course, the author is from China, and the book was written not in English, so it needed to be translated, and it was translated by Ken Liu of the Paper Menagerie fame. So I know you're a big Paper Menagerie fan, and you've read. Have you read other works from Ken Liu? I know you had acquired them at some point, but no.
Just the Paper Menagerie and other stories, like his
right
collection of some of his best short story work.
Right.
So I've read a lot of short stories by him, but no, I haven't read any of his novels or.
So this kind of counts. I mean, there's a lot of artistry that goes into translations, especially for a work of fiction like this. So you get to see some of his influence in the American version of this tale. And it's interesting because it's like super promoted. Like he's one of the he's listed next to the author in Goodreads, which is not something you see a lot. Like I know we've done The Witcher, and it's like kind of glance over who the translator is there. So kind of interesting they put him front and center. So super interesting kind of connection there. And just to give you a sense of like how big of a deal this book was, I believe it was the first Hugo Award given to a work from China, I want to say. But it was the Hugo Award for Best Novel. It was an award winner in 2015. And then it was also, it was nominated for the Nebula Award for Best Novel. So huge accolades. And then, of course, we all now know it in popular culture. It has returned because of the Netflix series adaptation. And you may be aware of this, Dylan, but did you know that the 3-Body Problem show is produced by none other than Benioff and Weiss? Who people that have not listened or are not as crazy as we are may know that they are the showrunners, creators of the Game of Thrones TV show, and they have returned. Were you aware of this, Dylan?
If you asked me who the producers of the show were, with without any other context, I don't think I would have been able to name Benioff and Weiss, but I am, now that you're bringing up, like, I recognize that, like, I remember when it was like, oh, they're going to do the three body problem, and then everyone was mad. Everyone was mad that D&D, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, right? That they would dare step back onto a set and work to create another show, even though they did create at least like 4 seasons of some of the greatest television ever created, in my opinion.
One of the biggest pop culture phenomenons of our time, in television anyway. They also immediately lost all momentum when they bailed on Game of Thrones, and you know, very sad. But I feel like we are a bit more generous than the average person in popular culture is towards Benioff and Weiss. Like, I'll always love them for the early seasons of Game of Thrones. You can't take those moments away. It's just,
of course not,
super magical. And here they are back at it again. You know, they didn't do the Star Wars thing that they left for. They didn't do a couple other things that they were considering doing. They landed here with this huge Hugo Award winning novel. And you may see some interesting cast members in this show. Sir Davos is in the show. Samuel Tarly is in the show. I forget his name, but he was the leader of the church, not the Robins, but whatever, that big church.
The Sparrow?
The Sparrow. Yeah. The Sparrow is in here as well.
The Oriole?
Well, I knew it wasn't the Ravens, but I couldn't remember.
It wasn't the Cardinal.
Benedict Wong is also in it. He wasn't in Game of Thrones, but he was in that one about Kublai Khan. He's in Marco Polo, which was excellent. And he's in the Marvel stuff, too. So, obviously, a lot to talk about here. I mean, the Goodreads ratings are pretty positive, 4.09 with 345,000 ratings. So, this is a huge deal. And, you know, we had so much fun and success reading Dune and then watching the movie and then doing an episode on the movie. Here we are again, another brand new theatrical, silver, TV screen adaptation of a popular sci-fi book, much more recent in time for a more modern age. So I think we can have another really exciting conversation around another work of popular science fiction. I really enjoyed our Dune episodes and watching the movies, and it just added so much more to the experience getting to watch that. And we have the same opportunity here. I'm not saying we have to watch the Netflix show, but I mean, Benioff and Weiss, if we're going to read the book, I mean, why not give the show a shot? And so there it is, the 3-body problem. I mean, that's a big one.
Cixin.
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 That's what I've gathered from my research. And yeah, Charles, that is a compelling pitch right there. Mm-hmm. You have me excited by this idea of being able to read the book, watch a movie, compare and contrast, that kind of stuff. That was, like you said, a ton of fun to do with Dune. This is one of those books that I was very aware existed without really knowing what it was about.
Right.
And, like, loosely I knew aliens were involved, but even just you reading the premise, I was like, oh, okay, so that's what this is about. Mm-hmm. And it's actually very intriguing. Like, I'm not shocked that this has been such a hit. And I also had no idea that Ken Liu was the person who translated this to English. I mean, you're getting an award-winning author in his own right to take his time to translate another author's work. I mean, that is very impressive. So he must have been really impressed with the book if he wanted to take the time to do that. So great get. And I think it's got to be a really, really, I don't know, a really tough choice to pick between
because one,
this
it's the
book
most
and
reviewed of all of the books that we've pitched between yours and mine.
Yes.
It's the most. And then also, it's as timely as it's going to get with the Netflix adaptation that it came out a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago at this point. It's not going to get any fresher. So the pressure's on.
yeah.
The pressure's on.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had debuted so recently, March 21st, 2024, on Netflix, which I don't have
just over a
access
month
to anymore because I live separate from my parents who live in another state and have our Netflix account. And but Charles, maybe this would be worth getting Netflix again. Is it like they released all of them at once, or
Yeah, that's how Netflix goes. I mean, I think maybe at this point all
not
the
with
episodes
Stranger
have to,
Things?
not with Stranger Things,
They
but I
look
think
crap.
all the episodes are out. But don't hold me to that. Like I haven't been following it. I haven't watched it. I've seen the promos because I still have Netflix and I'm browsing through and they promote it heavily.
Humble brag.
Yeah, you know, I pay for my own Netflix subscription. It is what it is. But yeah, it looks good, and I recognize the Game of Thrones actors in there, so I would totally watch it. I'm super down, but we don't have to. I'm pitching the book. I can't imagine not watching the show though. But this is where we're at. So sit on that, Dylan, because the next book I'm going to bring may not be as popular, but the author, the name, carries so much weight, and that is Stephen King and the fairy tale. And you
Never
know,
heard of
Dylan, that you're a big deal when your author name is bigger than the title of the book on the cover, because that's the situation that we have with fairy tale. The cover just says Stephen King over a third of it, and then there's an image, and then on a very tiny thing it says fairy tale. But I had pitched the Dark Tower book 1 last time or two recently in Friends Pitching Fantasy History. You didn't go for it, and that's okay. But I'm not gonna just stop trying to bring one of these big authors into the mix. I mean, we've discussed so many: Patrick Rothfuss, Mark Lawrence, Joe Abercrombie, like Tolkien. You know, we hit the big guys constantly. And Stephen King is one of those prolific, super famous authors that we've just never brought into the show. Now, he does mostly write horror, I'll give you that. But here he is with his dark fantasy novel that came out just 2 years ago. So I'll read the description and we'll get into it. It's kind of long. We'll see how it goes. Legendary storyteller, Stephen King, right in the beginning, goes deep into the well of his imagination in this spellbinding novel about a 17-year-old boy who inherits the keys to a parallel world where good and evil are at war, and the stakes could not be higher for their world or ours. And the main character's name, which had no influence on me picking this book, Charlie Reed, looks like a regular high school kid, great at baseball and football, a decent student. But he carries a heavy load. It's deviated a little bit. His mom was killed in a hit-and-run accident when his dad was 10,
geez.
and grief drove his dad to drink. Charlie learned how to take care of himself and his dad. Then, when Charlie is 17, he meets Howard Bowditch, a recluse with a big dog and a big house at the top of a big hill. In the backyard is a locked shed from which strange sounds emerge, as if some creature is trying to escape. When Mr. Bowditch dies, he leaves Charlie the house, a massive amount of gold, a cassette tape telling a story that is impossible to believe, and a responsibility far too massive for a boy to shoulder. Because within the shed is a portal to another world. Man, this is going to tell the whole story. One whose Denzians are in peril
like
and
the
whose monstrous
Magician's
leaders, blah, blah, blah. You get where this is going. A story as old as myth and as startling and iconic as the rest of King's work. Fairy Tale is about an ordinary guy forced into the hero's role by circumstance and is both spectacularly suspenseful and satisfying. So I skipped like a whole paragraph because I was like, I'm not going to read.
Pitch?
That's the that is the back of the book blurb there. So as you could see, very lauded and, highly promoted and successful. I mean, Stephen King too. What's not to like? And I will say one of the things that I've kind of been looking for, because we've been reading a lot of fantasy lately, I've been binging, powering through a lot of books. Stephen King is a fantastic storyteller. He writes these characters and these scenarios that pull you in and entertain you. And I don't know about you, Dylan, but I could really use a book that is going to just kind of enrapture the imagination and keep me suspended and entertained. Like, that is something that, if a book can deliver on that, is a rare and valuable thing. And I think Stephen King is up for the task. And with a 4.11 with 239,000 ratings on Goodreads, I think, and it's a Goodreads Choice Award nominee for Best Fantasy back in 2022. How can you not give it a shot? I'm surprised we didn't entertain the idea of covering this back in 2022, but it was never even on my radar, so I missed it. But
we might have been on hiatus as well.
Oh, is this that? Okay, maybe so.
Might have been.
It's certainly possible. But yeah, there it is. What are you thinking? Because I know you almost picked Dark Tower last time. It was very tempting. How are you feeling about Fairy Tale?
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't think I've read any Stephen King.
I read the short story that was Shawshank Redemption.
Right. We read that in Mr. Miller's English class.
Yes.
Which, by the way, Charles...
Speaking of Netflix adaptations...
You did text me last night about an unfortunate coincidence regarding a recent Netflix show
about
is
an
it
English
movie,
teacher
Charles?
named Mr. Miller that what was it that I had to put in quotes there about his relationship with a student played by Jenna Ortega? It says blurring boundaries with Jenna Ortega. So it was a horrible movie. I tried to watch it because it's called Miller's Girl. How could you not watch that when you have a high school teacher?
We literally had an
Mr.
English
Miller?
Teacher named Mr. Miller, but
Exactly.
I can't imagine the real Mr. Miller is happy about this coincidence.
Devastating. That is not what you want.
You do not want, when you're an English teacher at a high school, a story on Netflix, a movie coming out that is about a high school teacher named Mr. Miller who may or may, I don't know,
blurs boundaries.
You didn't get far enough in the movie, so we don't know to what extent boundaries were blurred with a high school girl played by Jenna Ortega, but you never want to blur boundaries at all. You want the boundaries in place. And
that's
Mr.
one of the worst
Miller
things you could do with the boundaries as a high school teacher,
them.
So that's pretty devastating.
Yeah. It's as bad as it gets besides crossing.
And I will say there
blurring...
is, speaking of adaptations, there is an adaptation
Good job.
in the works.
Good bringing it back.
There is an adaptation of Stephen King's Fairy Tale in the works. It's just
really?
It's murmurings right now, but according to the Wikipedia page, there's a producer that's involved, there's a studio that's involved. I mean, it's Stephen King. They're going to adapt literally everything that guy writes. It's pretty safe. But it's reported that British filmmaker Paul Greengrass, known for the Jason Bourne film franchise... Greengrass, Greengrass, one word, would adapt, direct, and produce a film adaptation of the novel, with American producer Gregory Goodman co-producing the film alongside Greengrass. So there you go. It could happen anytime now.
Wow, so Greengrass and... what's the full name?
Paul Greengrass and Gregory Goodman.
Johnny Red Fire Truck. Are going
Gray
to be
Sidewalk
this movie?
is going to be in this one, is tied to it. But it's a standalone, which is also kind of interesting. It means we get to cover a whole Stephen King tale, cover to cover. Kind of long at 600 pages, but nothing like too crazy. When you consider it's a standalone, there's no other books to read afterwards. It's manageable. Three Body Problem is 472 pages, so it's definitely a bit longer. But wait until we get to Ship of Magic. That's the longest by far, but get there. But yeah, dude. I mean, it's more contemporary. It takes place in a more modern day. I think it takes place in April 2013 is when it takes place. So not that far into the past.
Is it in Maine?
Good question. It's in Illinois.
Whoa.
I know.
Stephen King
really
stretching
out.
the imagination to go all the way to Illinois.
All the way to Illinois. So much like The Magicians, this is a contemporary setting where magic becomes involved. But I think Stephen King's going to take it in a little bit of a different direction than Lev Grossman took his. But who knows? Maybe not that far. I mean, it sounds really character-focused. It sounds, really kind of, who knows where Stephen King can take it. Like, it seems kind of like, good versus evil, fate of the world. Young kid discovering he's got a ton of gold and magic now. But I have a feeling it's not going to be that simple with Stephen King, and we're going to get some challenging subject matter around that. But I can't say for sure, but I'm curious to see where it goes. And again, we haven't really had the experience of reading Stephen King, so it's time to see what all the fuss is about with this author, right, Dylan?
I think that you've piqued my interest, Charles. Mm-hmm. I do feel like I have to read Stephen King at some point, like besides short stories. I'll have to think if I'm just not remembering a Stephen King book that I've read.
Tried to cover it for a book report, but you didn't read it.
In Mr. Miller's class, yes.
Yes. Oh, God.
A lot of Mr. Miller coming up today. Yeah,
yes.
That's the infamous story that we've told probably like 5 or 6 times on here, but I didn't end up reading it. I ended up writing the essay off of a Wikipedia summary of the movie, like the old movie. Because those were the Wild West days. Like we're old enough, Charles, especially you, where we
were in the same graduating class at school, but that's okay.
Right? Yes, yeah. It took you a longer period of your life to graduate high school than it did for me. But
same amount of time.
Born in an entirely different
started
year.
like 10 months later than you. That's fine.
Yeah. So I'll have to say we are old enough that when we were in high school, there was a time where like a Stephen King book could have not had a good Wikipedia article summarizing the entire plot, and you'd have to, look at a Wikipedia page for the movie instead, and then write an essay based on that.
Breaking news, by the way, Stephen King tweeted 49 minutes ago, The Three Body Problem, all caps, parentheses, Netflix. Extraordinary science fiction series, sprawling, thought-provoking, immersive. The scenes of first contact are chilling and awe-inspiring. So there you go. You got Stephen King in the mix, weighing in on Three Body Problem. I knew all these were connected. I'm bringing all of this together. You have to understand that these picks are... I spent time picking these. They're all coming together. Okay. Weaving in. The universe is making it happen, Dylan. So there you go. Fairy Tale, Stephen King.
Wow. Oh, did you see what Stephen King just tweeted?
No.
Just now.
No.
He tweeted Miller's Girl, a stunning, compelling tale of when boundaries are blurred between an English teacher and a high school girl played by Jenna Ortega. The best movie or series or anything on Netflix right now. Wow.
Man,
he really
went for it. If he enjoyed that, then you can't trust anything he says after. His credibility's ruined because it was unwatchable. And I can sit through movies but that was just, I was like, life's too short, man. I can't. It's so bad.
Yeah.
But
no, you had a good line. You said you described it as can I say what you described Miller's Girl as? An impressive combination of pretentious and vapid. That's bad.
You could take that to the bank.
You can
It
take
was
that to the bank.
so bad.
You
Yeah,
did say
stupid.
impressive. Maybe they'll use it as promotion. Like
And
it'll
it's
just
got
be
two
like
actors
dot
that I
dot.
really respect. And you got Bilbo Baggins as the Mr. Miller
Yeah.
character, and you got Jenna Ortega as the student.
Right.
Like, how could you
I
mess
heard
that
Wednesday just started filming, so she'll get
that's
back
exciting.
to making something that people will enjoy.
up? Good. Hopefully, her
soon.
career can bounce back from that, because that was brutal.
I don't think anyone even noticed this movie came out except for those of us who were in.
I was like,
the other
Miller's
Mr.
girl?
Miller's
I was like, it's about an English teacher named Mr. Miller? So, yeah, anyway. Moving on to my next and final pitch here, Dylan.
I definitely did fairy tale dirty there. I'm sorry.
We did
I'm sorry,
but you know
Stephen
what?
King.
Stephen King, respect on the name. Highly praised fantasy book. I see the cover everywhere. Like when I'm on Spotify, when I'm looking at the library, like the Amazon recommendations. Like it's always
I can
way
distinctly
up there.
picture the cover. It's like blue,
Yes.
right? With like
the
a little,
red kind of
Yeah.
core in the center. It's been permeating through modern fantasy recommendations online pretty aggressively, more than many other fantasy books at the same time have. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with Stephen King, but I think general reception to the book is very positive, and from the early descriptions, it sounds pretty good. And I'll admit I did skim the first couple pages, and it's engrossing, man. It's very good. He's got a good style, so I would love to read it. Very interested. But you know what else I would love to read as well is the Liveship Traders Trilogy, starting with Ship of Magic. Dylan, I don't think Robin Hobb needs too much of an introduction on this show. We recently just finished the Assassin's Apprentice, that trilogy, which is the name of it is escaping me. Farseer trilogy. Duh. Assassin's Apprentice being the first book in the Farseer trilogy. I had pitched that recently. You chose it, and it was second place in our March Madness fantasy book bracket, dude. Made it all the way to the finals because we just fell in love with Robin Hobb's prose, her character work. I mean, the influence on authors that we love like Patrick Rothfuss is so apparent. Now, what if I told you that not only does this continue in the universe of the Farseer trilogy as part of what's called Realm of the Elderlings, which is a 16-book, many-decade-long project of a bunch of smaller series. But if I also told you that it's pretty much universally accepted that the Liveship Traders is Robin Hobb's best work. And it all starts with Ship of
In what
Magic.
universe, Charles?
I'm telling you, dude, people say that this book is her best work, and it's even, I feel like it's in her Wikipedia too. Several critics regard it as Hobb's best work. That's in the first paragraph of the Wikipedia page for the Liveship Traders Trilogy. So if it's in Wikipedia, then it has to be true. So
That's what I was trusting when I was writing that essay based on the Wikipedia summary of the old It movie.
Exactly. So let me get into the back of the book for the Ship of Magic specifically, by Robin Hobb. Bingtown is a hub of exotic trade and home to a merchant nobility famed for its live ships, rare vessels carved from wizard wood, which ripens magically into sentient awareness. The fortunes of one of Bingtown's oldest families rests on the newly awakened live ship Vivacia. For Althea Vestrit, the ship is her rightful legacy, unjustly denied her. A legacy she will risk anything to reclaim. There's a kind of a thread there. For Althea's young nephew, Wintro, wrenched from his religious studies and forced to serve aboard ship, Vivacia is a life sentence. But the fate of the Vestrit family and the ship may ultimately lie in the hands of an outsider. The ruthless pilot, Kenneth, seeks a way to seize power over all of the denizens of the Pirate Isles and the first step of his plan requires him to capture his own live ship and bend it to his will. Dylan, I know you just finished reading, okay, The Great Quotes. Yes, you may.
I love Robin Hobb's work, but that, and I doubt she wrote that part because they don't usually write the back of the book stuff themselves, the authors.
No.
That sounds AI generated. I don't think it is. I'm not saying it is because it's way before we had that kind of technology, but I feel like if you ask ChatGPT to write like a hypothetical Robin Hobb story, it would write that.
Yeah, it was.
They did her dirty.
It was a tough read. I was gonna say, it did not flow off the tongue. So she definitely did not read this, but it doesn't take away from the prestige of the book. Okay,
no, I mean we love Robin Hobb.
We love Robin Hobb. She stands alone. Like I've read the Farseer trilogy twice now. I was so impressed with it. I'm such a huge fan that I wanted to jump right into Liveship Traders. I really did. And I would have if it wasn't for, okay, we're doing a show, we got to read other stuff, bring it in. But on my own accord, I would have jumped right in because she had me pulled in. And the thing about the Ship of Magic is it's totally new characters from the first trilogy, but it's in the same world and it takes place a little bit afterwards. So there is some world building going on here, overarching. And Dylan, I know you just finished reading The Trader's Blade by Sebastian de Castell, and you're all talking about swashbuckling this and pirates that, and here we are. We got pirates
in that book.
I know, but we were talking about pirates because we were talking about swashbuckling, and we were talking about all kinds of other, the extending the definition of swashbuckling, and here we are.
Does it need pirates?
Does it need pirates? Good question.
A question for the philosophers.
We don't have to ask that here, though, because they're here. And we've got seafaring, we've got magic ships, which, again, like Chathrin Voyage, which is another series that we love, that takes place on a ship and there's magic and it's seafaring.
I do love ships.
You love ships, dude. I think you've started to learn this about yourself. And so here you go, Robin Hobb, the finals of our bracket, that came out not even 2 months ago. And here's the opportunity to continue reading Robin Hobb and reading some of her most critically acclaimed work with the Liveship Traders. And I'm trying to look for any other recommendations I wanted to shout out here. But no, that is it, because I don't want to spoil too much here. But hey, Robin Hobb, you can't go wrong. And one of this book particularly is praised for its character work and its world building, right? So the character work is something that we take very seriously. That's complex characters is tossed around a lot in the reviews for this book in particular. So what more could there be? I mean, her prose is absolutely masterful. We know we fell in love with Fitz's chivalry, and not necessarily for him as a person, but for just the insane amount of complex character work that was achieved in that book that is parallel to nothing. I mean, you could maybe put Rothfuss in there with Quoth, but it's kind of that level of this character is amazing, the characterization is masterful, I love this world, I could read anything that happens to this character, and now here we are, a chance to relive the magic with Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb.
Great pitch there, Charles. You are pitching to the choir here, because I came away from our read of the Farseer trilogy a huge fan of Robin Hobb for all of the reasons that you've been mentioning. Prose is way up there with the best of them. Characterization, way up there with the best of them. And then you've got to put this idea in my head of, is it possible that Robin Hobb just continued to become a better writer as she kept honing her craft and kept writing novels? And is it possible that this is going to be even a next step? And what could that even look like when you're dealing with someone as masterful as she showed herself to be when she wrote the Farseer trilogy? So now my head is just spinning with the idea of, what?
This came out in 1998, by the way, is the first book.
I mean, this is the kind of thing, Charles, I know we will return to Robin Hobb's world. We will read these books. And the question is, will it be now? I don't know. You've got a lot of tough choices here. You've got huge hits that transcend genre in the Three-Body Problem and fairy tale. You don't have to be a sci-fi or fantasy reader generally to have ended up reading either of those. And then you have just an author who we put on our Mount Rushmore of modern fantasy authors, Robin Hobb. And I don't know how a person is supposed to choose between those, but luckily we have our wonderful listeners to help me. And I'm excited to see what the poll ends up looking like here. Like, are people in the mind space of the headspace of the Three-Body Problem with that show having just come out? Are they just big Stephen King fans and they'll come out and vote for fairy tale or anything by him? Or will our subset of Robin Hobb loyalists come out and support this trilogy, which probably doesn't have the same level of popularity as the Farseer trilogy, but I know people love, and it has to be a good choice because Robin Hobb wrote it. I don't know, Charles, but luckily I don't have to have it figured out just yet.
Nope, not just yet, but soon, because we're going to have to pick. You're going to have to pick one of these. I'm going to have to pick one of yours on Monday. So a lot to discuss until then. I think for now, though, the only thing we can do is get that outro music pumping. What do you say?
Yeah, let's get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping, Charles.
All right, here we go. Thank you, everyone, one and all, for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. If you want to support the show and incorporate your influence into what we read next, this is very important, guys. Go to social and cast your vote. That's over at the FTF podcast on Instagram. We have TikTok as well. I don't think there's going to be a poll there, but go there anyway. And then also at the FTF podcast with a number 1 at the end on Twitter. Now, I don't know if they like what they heard today and they want to support the show even more than engaging with us over on social and voting for that next book that we're going to read on the show. What can they do?
Toss 5 stars to our podcast, which you can do over on Spotify. Just go to that Friends Talking Fantasy podcast feed, click about, click where the stars are, and throw us 5 reviews. You can also rate and review on Apple Podcasts. That means you can say nice things about us. You can say, hey Charles, you did a really great job with those pitches. I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much.
But just listening is more than enough. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening all the way to the end. You guys are awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.